We are back. This is Adwicta.
Hi, this is Merps. We journey onwards.
This is our final video about neutrals, slash podcast about neutrals, and this is the Lightforge Arena tier list valuation
Okay,
show
so
for Saviors of Uldum.
yes, we talked about the one true card in neutral. Then we talked about pretty good cards. Then we talked about meh cards. Let's talk about the really bad ones.
All right, we're in the really bad ones now. We're gonna go through these as quickly as we can because we're also
Real
talking about
quick, real quick,
legendaries in this video. It's called the deep
real
cuts
quick.
video because these are cards you're never gonna see in the arena because they're
Do
so
it real
bad,
quick.
or because they're legendaries and they're not offered.
Real quick, do it.
Kobold Sandstorm Trooper, 2 mana, 2/1, common, Death Rattle, deal 3 damage to the enemy hero. So it's like the old Leper Gnome before it got nerfed, with an extra damage for an extra mana.
Not actually Kobold Sand Stormtrooper. It is just Sand Trooper. So even worse. If you thought it was bad, if you thought Adult's card was bad, this is even worse. It's not. It's got even a crappier name.
This is probably actually playable in like a face deck and constructed, I imagine.
Yeah, it. Who knows, man?
But yeah, arena, no.
Yep. All right.
Blatant Decoy. 6 mana, 5/5, Death Rattle. Each player summons the lowest cost minion from their hand. Yeah. That's not good because your opponent can just play out all their small cards, and presumably you have already played out all your small cards, and you'll just both put out a big card, and you don't get an advantage in that.
No, and you don't get to attack with it's. You never really gain an advantage with this card. Typically not, anyways. So it's bad.
All right. Next up, Mogu Cultist. 1 mana, 1/1. Battle Cry. If your board is full of Mogu Cultists. Repeat that. If your board is full of Mogu Cultists, sacrifice them all and summon a Highkeeper Ra. I don't know what a Highkeeper Ra is. I don't really care. I know it has a fancy animation coming in.
No. You don't know what Highkeeper. Wait. We created this card and you didn't even know what it is?
Full disclosure, the algorithms thinks this card has no ability.
Are you serious? Okay, we obviously have to calculate. Okay. Highkeeper Ra, guys, is a 10 mana 20/20. At the end of your turn, deal 20 damage to all enemies.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
So it's a non-existent card in the arena. Let's just move on.
No. Full petition. Chat, riot with me right now. Full petition to have this go from a 42 to at least a 43. All right.
I'll go from
At
a
least.
42 to a 42. That's my final offer.
Ooh, hard sell. I accept. Let's move on.
All right. The next is Spitting Camel at 38. This is like really bad, by the way. If you're wondering how bad 42, like before we were talking about something like what Blatant Decoy, right? Which is bad, but that's like where Murloc, Tiny Fin, and Wisps are, right? Like that's like bad, but like you could somehow put it in your deck, and you're not going to ruin your whole deck necessarily. Mogul Cultist is a 42. This is in addition to other 1 mana 1/1s. This is like where like Dozing Marksman is. That's the 2 mana 0/4 has +4 attack if damaged. This is where like Alarmobot is. This is where like Serpent Ward is. That's a 2 mana 0/2. At the end of your turn, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. These are not new cards, but I have to say them because no one knows what they are. Like Eerie Statue is here. 4 mana 7/7. Can't attack unless it's the only minion on the board. Like these are not really things. But okay. So worse than all of these is Spitting Camel. 2 mana 2/4. At the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to another random friendly minion.
Yep. This isn't the 6th bucket, by the way. This isn't 7th bucket material. 6th bucket.
So it comes out, right? It's not going to trade with anything if you play it on 2. But by the way, if you don't play it on 2, it's a pointless card, right? It's just bad. If you play it on 2, it's not going to like... It's going to hopefully eat something. It may not, but even if it does eat something, your next card's going to come out and it's going to be like low. So, I don't know. We have it rated really low. I could see it being better than this. I don't think it matters because it's just a terrible card regardless. Like, but I'm not gonna like defend this at a 38. It could be a 70 for all I know. We didn't really focus too much on it, but don't pick
Yeah.
this card.
No, this is the thing. When I looked at the scores yesterday, I was like, Spitting Camel seems. I really don't give a damn.
Yeah,
That's the thing. You.
like we had a time crunch. It would take. It's a really
I really don't
complicated
care.
curve to work out, and so we just didn't give it a curve, positive or negative, and so that's why it's so low. It probably has a more positive than a negative curve, but eh,
Meh.
eh.
Cool.
Okay. Desert
We go
Obelisk.
for we strive for diligence and quality here at the Lightforge tier list. Okay,
So
no stone
basically,
left
if you
unturned.
see Spitting Camel gain 30 points at some point in the next like month, maybe.
Who knows?
Desert Obelisk. 5 mana, 05. If you control 3 of these at the end of your turn, deal 5 damage to a random enemy. You're not going to control 3 of these. This is what a 05. If you ever wonder how the algorithm works, this is what a 5 mana 05 means. It's got 12 points.
Whoa, it's a thing.
Yeah, because you could buff it.
Wow.
It removes like your enemy if they deal damage to like random things, right? It could potentially be a target.
Wow.
It has actual non-zero value, which I can't say for the 2 other cards that are remaining in the Saviors of Uldum reveal. These are the worst cards, at least in this meta. I think we have some other zeros in neutral, but they're not in this meta. One is Generous Mummy, which I know at least some people think it's worth more than 0. This is on average in an average deck, by the way, so it could have some value potentially in another deck. It won't. Please don't ever take this card. 3 mana, 5/4 Reborn. Your opponent's cards cost 1 less. So
this is so bad. It's so bad.
Your opponents are probably going to get something like 5 mana out of this, so you can only play it when your opponents like are like out of cards ish, and mana doesn't matter. And at that point, you don't care that it's 3 mana at that point. At that point, it's just like a 5/4 Reborn, which is nice, but you'd really rather have pretty much any other 6 mana or 8 mana card, right? Like than this card at that point. So it's unplayable early, and late game you just want a bigger card. It kind of gets you a little bit of extra tempo late game. And you're vulnerable to your opponent playing like card draw, right? And then getting the benefit again.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Shane does it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
This is just a thing which. So remember, we penalize a card for not being able to play on 3. This is the only time in which it is playable is like turn 12 when you really don't care about your opponent playing cards. So this is just, it's so bad. You really don't want Reborn on it. You really don't want Reborn on it. If it didn't have Reborn on it, it would be a better turn 3 card actually, but it has Reborn on it, so it's useless. It's a negative. It's an actual negative in your deck.
Yep. Okay, Mortuary Machine is the other one. It's a 5 mana 8/8. After your opponent plays a minion, give a Reborn. So like it's just giving your opponents like I don't know 3/1s, 4/1s whenever your opponent plays something. It's not gonna die immediately. You can't kill it off. It has 8 health, so it's just gonna give your opponents like a lot of stuff. Probably more stuff than an 8/8 overall. So you're also spending 5 mana and a card for it.
I think this surprises a lot of people because we went from rating 5 mana 8/8 as the best, the absolute best neutral card
Bell Reaver
from Fell Reaver to this, which we rate like the worst.
It's
and I think it's surprising. Yeah. So here is the problem with it. For 5 mana, you're supposed to get a 5/6 or a 6/5, one of those, right? So here you get a decent amount of stats, but as soon as your opponent plays 1 minion, they've basically already recouped the tempo. Now, if your deck is so ridiculously fast that you might be able to take advantages on the very next turn, maybe. I could potentially see this in a Merps Hunter. Maybe. Even then, I'm like, I don't know. But the problem is if you really don't finish off your opponent in the next turn, you can't really kill this off easily. and you've given your opponents way too much tempo, like way too much board presence, and just you're unable to come back
Yeah.
from
So
that.
if you're trying to trade with this, you're never going to get your card advantage value ever. So it's pointless. This is one of those things. It's like it should be an 8 mana. It could be an 8 mana 8/8, right? Like if all you're doing is trying to get card advantage like out of it, that's going to be better than this 5 mana 8/8. So you can't get card advantage out of it. You can't trade. You got to go face. Now, what is this really, really, really bad for? When your opponent plays a taunt, because then their taunt gets reborn. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. When they play a rush minion, their rush minion gets a reborn. When they play something with a death rattle, they get to double their death rattle or whatever. Like, it's just so much stuff. It's countered by so many things. Like, the list of things is really, really long, and you have to use it to go face. So in a mid-range deck, it doesn't work. In any kind of deck besides super aggro, it doesn't work. Like Merp said, it's got to be super, super aggro for this for this to stand a chance in hell of working. And it's got to be one of those decks where it's like, well, if they taunt, we lose anyway, so we don't care. And then
Yep.
you can play this. But really, really, you'd be better off playing a 5/5 for 5, even in those decks for most games.
For most games, yeah. And what you can't think about, because I think people, and I see this way too often. So I want to beat this out of everyone. Okay, so just beat this out of your head. Hero power pings aren't free. They cost mana, and sometimes for 2 classes they cost health. So some people look at something like this as like, oh, I don't care if I give them reborn. I can just ping it. Pings are not limitless, and they're definitely not free. As soon as you ping one, you are giving credit for this. So essentially, if you look at mana to mana, you are already giving them immediately, like ping wise, 2 mana, and it turns into a 7 mana 8/8, which is like okay, just okay. So this is something in which, if you look at it, even in the most basic scenario, your opponent just plays one minion, any sort of minion. They've already recouped uh, the tempo advantage. It is late tempo, but tempo advantage that you've gained with so much more ahead of it. So this is one in which I completely agree.
Yeah.
This is so bad.
So these are the kinds of things where like it's actually kind of important to spend some time on this, because some people think they're draftable, and it is as important to know that these cards are not draftable, because they will ruin your entire run versus like a 3 mana 3/3 or even a 1 mana 1/1. Like, this is an unplayable card, and if you're drafting it, you don't think it's unplayable, and you're gonna lose a lot because of that, right?
Yep.
Like, so it's very important to know why these are like where they are. Okay, now we are going to the fun part, legendaries. Part of the deep cuts, not because they're bad like the other ones, but because they actually are very good, but you just don't see them because they won't get offered. So the top 4 legendaries in this meta are going to be all Saviors of Uldum legendaries. They just went down the list and made like amazing legendaries for neutral.
That's so insane. We've never had this. We've never had
this. It's true.
And not anything close to it.
Nope.
At all.
This is ridiculous. This is like they just took whatever like things they had on neutral legendaries, and they're like, let's bring back the Ragnaroses. On the bright side, none of these are like you can use them in every situation, so I can see them in when they're doing constructed being like none of these will be like Rag and be good for every single late game deck. So let's start at the top. Zephrys the Great. I will leave this to you because this is the highest rated card in the entire game right now. It is a 234.
Guys, you're welcome. It's your boy Merps representing you guys, repping the big ZG, Zephrys the Great, okay? Zephrys the Great is 2 mana, 3/2 elemental battle cry. If your deck has no duplicates, wish for the perfect card. What this means is Blizzard has created an algorithm such that whenever you play this card, if you have no duplicates in your deck, it looks at the cards you have in your hand, the mana you have left, the board state, the health of your opponent and you. It takes all public information that you see in front of you and gives you a discover of the perfect card that you need.
So 3 cards that you possibly need. Like maybe you need a heal and a board clear and like a taunt, and so they'll give you those options.
Yep.
In theory.
In theory, and you can help out the discover as well. For example, if you want that flame strike and you have small minions, you should actually get their minions to 4 health, and then it will give you that flame strike. You're helping out the algorithm and pointing it towards that flame strike so that it will definitely be offered. So I'm going to tell you guys right now, a good hour of this afternoon was devoted to me gassing up this card because
it was originally rated a 175, which was apparently too low for Merps.
No, 135.
No, that was before we fixed the bug.
Oh, and then you fixed the bug and it was 175. I was like,
well, we had a bug with all Highlander cards, so that got fixed.
But I was like, no. This cannot be, okay? This card has to be the best card. And then we argued on some, assumptions for this. But Blizzard, I am sticking my neck out for you, okay? I believe in your algorithm. I have seen the power in the stream.
Okay.
This is going to be amazing.
All right. So, obviously, we don't know how good Blizzard's algorithm actually is. I was going to be a little cautious about it and make it the same as if it allowed you to just tutor a card from your own deck. But Merps was very much insistent that it needs to be 50% better than tutoring from your own deck because it effectively, according to him, tutors from the entire card pool of the game. Because
it does.
That is only true if Blizzard gets the algorithm right. And you know what? That's fair. So if they get it right, then this is a 234. That's fine. Maybe even be higher than that if they get it absolutely perfectly.
And guys, I understand it is only quote unquote basic and classic, but basically everything you need is there. If you need heart removal, if you need card draw, if you need you got everything there that you need. There's not a sort of like a category of cards that you really need that's like not available in basic and classic. So it's fine. It's fine.
Okay. So this is right now 1.5x tutor a card from your deck. If you guys are wondering how the algorithm is doing it, it's not doing wish a card or whatever the hell that may be. But yeah, just in case you didn't catch it from the earlier videos, the algorithm is doing literally 100% of this expansion. It's the first time we've actually hit 100%. I'm counting it as 100%, even though this card is not actually algorithming, because this was silly. But it's still like doing the like body, the elementals. It's doing tutor a card, and it's just giving a 1.5 modifier on it. So that's how the algorithm is doing this card. But the other cards are all like above board. We have hit 100%. Normally we're at somewhere like 99.5% of cards seen and of cards seen in the meta. But we're pretty proud of that. Also, it means that this entire set was pretty basic. It's powerful, but it's basic because it's not giving the algorithm any trouble of like figuring stuff out. It's just recycling old mechanics. Okay,
Yep.
That's Zephyrs the Great. Next up, 197, which was the old best neutral legendary before Merps raised Zephyrs the Great.
Aha!
It's Octosari, 8 mana, 8/8 beast. Death Rattle, draw 8 cards.
This is really freaking good. I know this is sort of a meme card. This is really freaking good.
So remember how good like a Pyros was because it was a 2-drop and then a 6-drop and then like 8-drop or a 10-drop rather, and then it keeps drawing cards and you never lose out on your tempo. Well, here you don't get the 2-drop or the 6-drop, but you get way more freaking cards and you still don't lose out on your tempo. So that kind of makes up for it. We actually had to build in a whole new system. Not for this card, we were doing it for other cards, but it came in real handy for this one particular card where I looked at it, I was like, yes, that's why we spent like all those hours building in the system. And that's like a really, really sophisticated mill system. We had a very simple mill system before to handle things, and it was doing a good enough job with things like Fel Reaver and Banshee, and we were like, this is fine, we don't need more than that. But now the mill system is integrated with card draw, and all of card draw is integrated with like when cards are not usable because like the game ends before you can use the cards. Before only like things that like had effects on the board and bodies and death rattles and things like that were attributed to it. Now we've added card draw to it. So you see sprint going down like a good. Well, okay. So everything kind of went down 10 points. Sprint went down like 15 points, maybe 20. But that's because of this change. So it's not a huge deal, but it did make everything else a lot more, even it out a little. And with this card, you can't do this card without that system. So I'm glad we put it in. It's in. It's more complicated than just like, oh, what's the chances of the game ending if so you don't do this, because there's also the mill effect, which you have to know how many cards are in your deck, how much damage you're taking, how much those damage mean to you, all that stuff. Anyway, it's a really complicated system for kind of no reason, because we're like at the very end. There's like nothing else for us to do on this algorithm thing. So we're picking at straws. Okay. Next is Siamat. This is at 175. Again, these are just the most powerful cards. They're legendary, so maybe they're allowed to be super powerful. But it is 7 mana 6/6. This one comes closest to being an auto-include in every deck. 7 mana 6/6, Battlecry. Gain 2 of Rush, Taunt, Divine Shield, or Wind Fury. Your choice. So a popular one would probably be Rush and Divine Shield or Rush and Wind Fury. That makes it into a removal, and it could have up to 2 targets. So it's pretty good.
Yep.
If you don't have targets, you could Taunt and Divine Shield. Like, it's very flexible. It's very good.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Because some people might look at these scores and think, well, I'd rather have this card than Octosari. Octosari's hit rate is going like this Siamat or however you say it. You're going to have more instances in which it is a good card. Octosari is a card in which it is basically the card. It's like you need something like that and only something like that to win the game, right? So Octosari is really, really good. And I'm not saying that like a lot of times it'll suck and only sometimes it'll be really good, but the highs with Octosari are so good. And I know some people are afraid of like Mill. It's not going to be that applicable. Mill is really not going to be too applicable, but you get to put out a body and everything. So it's good. Like this card, the flexibility is really good, but the ability to draw that many cards is still extraordinarily powerful, especially in the arena. So I think that sort of explains the difference between these two cards.
All right. Well, we are now on to our next card. This is probably the most controversial, highly rated legendary. Colossus of the Moon is a 168. That makes it better than Undasta, better than High Inquisitor. It is a 10 mana 10/10 Divine Shield Reborn. It is basically a card with absolutely no initiative and no taunt, but if they don't have a hard removal, you are going to win the game if you don't die.
Oh, God.
So, this is one of those things, right? It's like Deathwing. You play it, and then if you're going to win, you're going to win. If you're going to lose, you're going to lose. Except it has other cards that you can play afterwards because it doesn't discard your hand. So you just have to take one turn of risk where you can't do anything. And then you can like mop up in your other turns to support this guy.
Guys, I could only do so much. I only have so much capital to use, all right? And I used it all on Zephyrus the Great, and then I gave up. I couldn't do anything about Colossus of the Moon. I'm sorry, I failed all of you guys.
Okay, 168. Try it, guys. Let me know how it is. That's what we're going with. It's just a whole crap ton of stats, and it's going to win you every card advantage game, so it forces your opponent to play a game that is potentially different than what they wanted to do. And that has a lot of value, especially when it is tempo as well, right? Like, there's a reason Sprint is not the most terrible card, even though you just spent 7 mana and you have no board impact. This is the same thing, only you have board impact.
I am curious, though, because I will say this. Sort of, but not really, jokes aside. I could see this card working. I could. I don't think it will.
What do you mean?
But
it's a really big card in Arena. The vast majority of the times you're not punished, especially by the time you get to here to play it, right? And you probably are going to play all your other cards before you play this, unless you're absolutely desperate. And then you play it, and then they can't deal with it, and they have to go face. So if you don't, like, if you're not in danger of face, you just automatically win. If you are in danger of face, what were you doing before this, right? Like,
yep.
Big cards win games. This is the biggest card.
Do win games, and if you don't have a polymorph or hex or a transform removal, right?
Yep.
This comes back. So
yep.
It is no, I definitely see the power of it. I'm just like still skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like rules of thumb, and I hate rules of thumb because it basically means I'm gonna stop thinking now. That's literally what rules of thumb mean.
No, it's true.
It just means I'm gonna stop thinking now. And a rule of thumb is that if you have a really, really big and expensive thing and has no immediate impact on the board, not even a taunt, it's unplayable. That's a rule of thumb. It's a good rule of thumb. It's true 99.5% of the time. But, you know, what if it's not this? What if it's something that, you know, looks like Colossus of the Moon, but also can't be targeted, but also is a 50-50 and has Wind Fury and cannot be taunted up? Like, you know, like you can always make something up that breaks that rule. Like, did this get far enough is really the question. But no one's thinking about that. Like, I'm sure none of you thought, or not none of you, but the vast majority of the people listening or watching are not thinking, did this get far enough to break that rule? You've stopped at the rule. You hit the rule of thumb, and you stop thinking. And that's not good. So if you really thought about it, you know, maybe it gets over the line, maybe it doesn't get over the line. I think it gets over the line to be a really, really insanely good card. Maybe it doesn't, and I'm wrong. But at least think about it. Like, actually think about why the rule exists and what it means, which is hard. That's why there's a rule like that, because if you were to evaluate every single card, there's a lot of cards that look like really big and beefy and they just like suck.
Wow, that was like the nicest way of calling all of us sheep. Holy shit.
I didn't mean for it to be a nice way.
Well, you know what? It was just so sophisticated. It sounded nicer than just calling us all sheep.
Okay. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see how this does.
All right, we'll see.
Beat goats, guys, not sheep. All right. And finally, here is a card where this is the one I'm a little skeptical about how the algorithm rated it. But I didn't have like, it's a legendary. I didn't care enough to look too deeply into it, and it's figuring out the odds, and it thinks the odds are low. So we'll see how many big spells exist in this meta that you would hold all the way through to turn 10.
That's the thing. You have to hold it at least until turn 10 and not use it. Right? Yeah. Like, there's a real cost to that. Like, there's a huge cost to that.
So it's a 10 mana 5/5. King Faurus. Is a cool looking dude. Battle cry. For each spell in your hand, summon a random minion of the same cost. So 1, you have to have a spell in your hand, at least 1. 2, it has to be a large spell at least, so that it gets its value worth. 3, you're running the same freaking issue as Colossus of the Moon here, where it's probably not going to have any immediate impact. And, like Merv said, you have to hold that spell, whatever big spell you get, which means you can't use it before. Like, let's say you have a Flame Strike. It's like, are you really not going to use a Flame Strike and wait for King Faurus? No, you're going to use a Flame Strike. Right? Like, if you have nothing to do because you're holding a 10 mana card and another 9 mana, like 7 mana card for that new Druid version of Sprint, like, are you really not going to spend that mana? No, you are. So you're just going to end up with whatever the heck King Faurus is able to take. So the way to make it work is to have a lot of card draw and a lot of spells, and some of them be big. That's a very specific set of scenarios, and at its best, it's still 10 mana, put a bunch of stuff on the board with no initiative, much of which is random.
Yeah, this would be a much better card if it was for each spell that you've cast, right?
Yeah.
Summon a random minion of the same cost. That would be an amazing card.
That's Dragoncaller Alanis.
Yeah. That would actually be decent at least. Uh, but no, you have to hold them. Like
Yeah.
whenever there is a cost, whenever a 10 mana card says, I'm going to reward you for not playing some cards. And but these are cards that are initiative and some of the most powerful cards in the game because spells are automatically class cards and automatically initiative cards. So I'm going to reward you for not playing these powerful cards that you've drafted and then going to give you a reward for it. Well, you're paying a ton already, and you're paying a ton to have a 10 mana 5/5. So in order to gain from it, or in order to just get back to what you should get, you need to hold back something with like 5 mana, right, worth of cost. Probably 6 to just get back what you're supposed to get. So that is to just recoup what you have initially lost. And any sort of value from this card has to be you holding back more than a 6 mana spell. That's a lot, guys. That's a whole ton of like sacrifice just for this. So really bad.
Yep. All right. That wraps up our review of all the neutral cards that are in this upcoming meta new in Saviors of Uldum. So, if you're wondering how the meta is going to shake out, this will help, but we're also going to summarize the meta at the very end of all of this. We're going to dig into class cards next, but the meta really is shaped a lot by neutral cards. I think in this meta, maybe less so than in the prior meta. Like, you know what happened in Saviors, right? Like, first Rogue was like busted, and then they like nerfed something, and then they lowered the offering rates. But all throughout, there was this very strong thread of Scribe and Hogsteed, some Dalaran Crusader, some Shovel Fist, right? Because they're the common neutral cards that are dominating here. We do have the dominance. We talked about Rap Golem. We have just as much dominance, almost just as much dominance. I think it averages out to a similar amount of dominance as Rise of Shadows. It's approaching like Ungoro levels. Ungoro's back, but they're not going to be seen as frequently because they are almost all epic or rares rather than commons. So I'm going to like. I actually I'm a little more skeptical than on most times about how the meta is going to be dominated by neutrals. Usually arena metas are, but in this one, at least the savior of Uldum neutrals, the good ones are not going to be seen as much as you would think that they're seen. So definitely good to know all this. They all have offering bonuses because there's a 50% offering bonus on the new set, and a lot of them are pretty interesting. I like the design of most of the neutrals that have come in. I think it'll really shake up your like normal on the board trading math in the arena. Um, but yeah, that's my wrap on the whole neutral set. Merps.
Cool. No, that's it. 3 hours later, we're done with neutrals.
Woo! Time to go to classes. So that's it for us for the neutrals. We will begin classes right after this. Class cards. Yeah. Until then, this is Adwicta.
This is Merp. See you guys.